There are over 8 billion of us now. Cities sparkle in the night from orbit like neural networks of light. We launch rockets beyond the atmosphere, stream sound and sight across oceans in seconds, race cars on solar energy, and carry entire libraries in the palms of our hands. But 74,000 years ago, none of that existed. Just a few thousand souls wandered the wilds of Africa, barefoot, desperate, scattered. And then came something so catastrophic, so absolute, that it nearly ended the human story before it had even begun. A supervolcano erupted in a place now called Lake Toba, unleashing a volcanic winter that darkened the skies for years and crushed Earth's fragile ecosystems. Some say humanity was reduced to as few as 2,000 individuals, clinging to life on the edge of extinction. If you're using these to fall asleep, that's literally why I make them. So, subscribe maybe and tell me where you are and what time. I check comments, and it's always Boston at breakfast, Cape Town at bedtime, Kyoto somewhere in between. All at once, the same story reaching everywhere. The world that preceded the eruption was already clawing through hardship. The Ice Age had tightened its grip, icing over continents and locking moisture away in glaciers. Homo sapiens had only recently stepped out of anonymity, competing with Neanderthals and other human cousins for food and shelter in an unforgiving terrain. Tribes migrated slowly, barefoot across sharp stone and frozen soil, chased by hunger and shadowed by predators. Fire was a fragile miracle. Language, barely born. Every nightfall was a question mark. And then, without warning, the sky split open. Somewhere, in what is now Sumatra, Earth released a fury unlike anything modern civilization has witnessed. It was not just a volcano. It was an extinction-level event. The blast echoed across continents, ejecting over 2,800 cubic kilometers of ash and gas into the atmosphere. Winds carried this poison around the world, shifting the very climate of the planet. Temperatures plummeted, the light dimmed, and a silence began, stretching not for days but for years, blanketing continents in shadow and cold. For early humans, survival was no longer a daily struggle, it became an hourly one. Crops did not yet exist, so there were no stores of grain to fall back on. Instead, their lifelines were fragile ecosystems, now collapsing under layers of acidic ash and snow. Herds of animals vanished or migrated beyond reach. Plants withered, rivers choked with debris and changed their course. The winds burned with cold. Entire regions were left empty, their inhabitants either fled or fallen. In East Africa, where some of the last remnants of Homo sapiens clung together in loose-knit bands, the sun became a stranger. Even midday was cast in dusky light. And yet, somehow, someone decided to try again. They scavenged roots in the dying underbrush, wrapped their infants tighter in hides, hugged the embers of fire through ceaseless nights. It is here, in the silence after the sky's wrath, that the endurance of our kind was quietly written. But not all parts of the world were equally undone. Some landscapes, shielded by mountains or spared by wind patterns, offered narrow pockets of life, refuges of warmth and water, flickers of green amid the ash-grey wastelands. These were the cradles of continuity, precious and few. The people who found them may never have known why their valley stayed warmer or their river kept flowing. But they stayed. They learned the silence, read shadows for signs of game, marked the trees that still bore fruit, and they passed on what they learned in murmurs around fires, in glances between generations, in trails etched into earth. Gene studies suggest it was from these marginal, scattered populations that all future humans would descend. A genetic bottleneck, tightening history through a single thread of survivors. One man, one woman, one tribe, one choice made in the dark. And so, in a world starved of light and warmth, the spark of humanity came close to flickering out, but never did. Still, shadows of that ancient darkness echo in our DNA. The evidence lies not only in the genetic bottlenecks traced by scientists, but in the stories, instincts, and fears that trail us into modernity. Why does fire still comfort us? Why do we fear the dark so deeply, or look to the sky with both awe and suspicion? Buried deep in the collective subconscious is a knowledge older than writing, older than myth. It remembers when the sun disappeared for years, when the earth cracked open and screamed smoke and stone, when existence narrowed to survival and survival depended on silence, memory, and trust. The dawn we now take for granted was once a miracle hard won, and perhaps, somewhere, some ancient voice still whispers that no matter how far we build or fly or imagine, we've been close to the edge before. Closer than we remember. Closer than we dare believe. In the centuries that followed, those survivors would spread once more slowly, cautiously, like embers after a storm. Step by step, life returned. The skies, though still tinted by memory, began to brighten. Forests crept back over the bones of what had been. Rivers found new paths, carving hope into a stunned landscape, and the children of the volcanic night carried with them stories they could not explain. Tales born in silence, etched in instinct. They developed new tools, painted caves with dreams, named the stars that once vanished. Civilizations would rise, fall, rise again. But deep below the surface of progress, beneath every pyramid and skyline, echoed the same unspoken truth, that history is not a line, but a thread pulled tight by those moments when the world almost ended. And in the silence left behind by shattered mountains, they learned that survival does not always roar. Sometimes, it simply whispers, "Try again." Toba left behind no ruins, no scrolls, no artifacts of grandeur. Its legacy was etched in mutation, migration, and the ghost patterns of humanity's near erasure. For decades after the eruption, the planet struggled to heal. Ocean currents faltered, rainfall patterns twisted into chaos, and vast grasslands turned barren. Time passed not in seasons but in shades of cold and silence. And yet, amid this planetary paralysis, mothers still sang lullabies, fathers told stories by glowing coals, and children dreamed beyond the hunger. In this aftermath, a behavior began to emerge, a spark of cooperation unfamiliar to other species. Shared food, shared warmth, shared purpose. Pain drove compassion, and somewhere along the slow thaw, that spark became a flame. It was not technology that saved them at first. It was each other. This is how our story resumed, not with dominance, but with bond. From nearly nothing, they built the thread of us, one kind gesture at a time, one fire at a time, one more step through ash and wind. Humanity did not only survive the volcanic winter, it evolved because of it. Today, the caldera that once shook the planet sleeps beneath Lake Toba, quiet and vast, its waters mirroring the clouds. Tourists drift across it in boats, snapping photos. Unaware, they float above scars etched into the bones of Earth itself. Villages line its shores. Laughter carries over the surface. But if the wind changes, if the sky darkens just right, one could almost imagine the past stirring beneath those depths. Scientists monitor Toba silently, reverently, like watching a sleeping god. Though it slumbers now, its power remains not in the threat it poses, but in the legacy it left behind. A legacy of fracture and resilience, of near-ending and new beginnings. The supervolcano's eruption reshaped the Earth, but it also reshaped us. It carved our fragility into stone, and our endurance into legend. So the next time the ground trembles, or clouds blot the sun for longer than they should, it is not only fear that rises, it is memory. Memory wrapped in silence, in fire, in frost. And in that memory, a simple truth that we are descendants not just of survivors, but of those who chose to imagine a future when the world gave them none. And now, each time we look up into the shifting sky or witness the rumble beneath our feet, we are unknowingly paying homage to that ancient moment of reckoning, the near erasure, the narrow corridor in time where humanity flinched but did not fall. Perhaps that is why we build so high, create so widely, wonder so deeply, not in defiance of what nearly destroyed us, but in remembrance of it. The stories we carry are older than memory itself, whispered forward through countless tongues and told again tonight, as you drift between sleep and silence. Somewhere, out there, it is Vienna, at twilight, Nairobi just before dawn, Vancouver in the velvet of midnight. The same story, the same spark, echoing across the world once more, all at once, forever reaching. So let this be more than just a chapter in a forgotten epoch. Let it be a reminder, one carved in ash and silence, in the breathless pause before extinction struck. When the world stood still and nearly abandoned us, it was not our strength that saved us, but our will, our audacity to endure. In that frozen dusk, humanity proved something more powerful than fire, resilience. And now, as we live in towers of light and speak across stars, the echo of that winter still hums beneath our skin. We are the children of the sky that went dark, of forests turned to stone, of a silence that once demanded surrender and was answered, instead, with hope. Sleep now, knowing the story never ends here, not in ash, not in cold, but always in the daring to begin again. Beyond the reach of satellites and the grip of technology, there remains something primal within us, an echo of nights, lit only by firelight, and mornings, cursed by the color of ash. The tale of Toba is not locked in glass museums or stone monuments, but in pulse and breath, in the quiet ways we navigate fear and cling to each other when the world changes without warning. That winter did not defeat humanity. It defined it, and perhaps somewhere in that blackened chapter, frozen in the molten rhythm of Earth's memory, lies the reason we still tell stories before sleep. For in the silence after the storm, when survival was no longer a promise but a question, someone chose to whisper a beginning rather than an ending. And because of them, we speak tonight. We dream. We endure. Until the next dawn calls us forward once more. And so, the sky that once turned black became blue again. Life, which had trembled so close to silence, murmured forward in the rustling of leaves, the tracking of footprints, the warmth shared between hands. The supervolcano sleeps now, but its breath lingers in our instincts, our ruins, our firelit gatherings. Let Toba be not only a warning etched into the crust of the earth, but a tribute to those who weathered its fury not with power, but with unity. It was not the strongest humans who endured, but those who stood together when the world fell apart. In the end, the volcanic winter did not bury humanity. It forged it. In frost and fire, in dark and dawn, we did not fade. We remembered, and from that memory, we rose. So wherever the night finds you beneath stars, beyond cities, beside someone, or alone, know this: the story still breathes, and so do you. Rest easy, dream deep. Another chapter waits with the morning light. Somewhere, as wind rustles through tall trees or frost gathers on a cabin window, someone inhales the quiet and exhales the history they never knew they carried. That is the echo of Toba, an ancient whisper passed through bloodlines and bedtime stories, through rituals forgotten and fears we still feel. It is the thread that binds a stone tool to a steel tower, a flickering torch to a glowing screen. No eruption could extinguish the human need to endure, to rebuild, to remember. And so tonight, as the world spins softly beneath a dark sky once darkened forever, This story returns again, alive in you, in us, in the strange miracle that we still endure. Let this be the lullaby of our lineage, not just a tale of what almost ended, but a tribute to all those who kept walking, even when the light was gone. Long before cathedrals rose or satellites drifted across space, before paper, plows, or nations, there stood a few humans beneath a sunless sky, watching smoke twist like ghosts above scorched earth. They could not understand the tectonic fury that had bent the heavens, nor predict that, millennia later, their descendants would sing in concert halls and map the stars their ancestors feared had vanished forever. All they knew was the next step must be taken, that the child in their arms must be fed, that the fire must not go out. They pressed forward, barefoot through a world reborn in ash, eyes searching shadow for signs of life. And it was their footsteps that carved the first path forward, not in triumph, but in defiance of silence. So sleep now, beneath your roof of stars or stone, and let that quiet resilience hold you, because somewhere in the memory of Earth, and within every beat of the story that still reaches, is the pulse of humanity pausing but never stopping. And perhaps that is the true legacy of the volcanic winter, not simply a tale of survival, but a blueprint of endurance written in silence and soot. It reminds us that the most profound chapters of our past were not sung beneath banners or carved into stone, but lived quietly in the margins under grey skies, around hesitant fires, in the hush of near extinction. From those fractured beginnings rose all the dreams we chase now. Every book opened, every bridge built, every heartbeat shared across oceans traces back to a time when the world nearly unspooled, and still, we chose to carry it forward. This was never just a history of a volcano. It is the story of the human spark, fragile, flickering, but impossibly persistent. So if tonight brings a storm, or silence, or just sleep, let it cradle you in the knowledge of what came before, not with fear, but with reverence, because we were meant to vanish, but we didn't. We're still here. And in that, there is something breathtaking, almost sacred, that a world gripped by extinction still found space for kindness, that a people shattered by cold and silence still passed on stories by firelight. That breath continued, that lullabies were sung atop bones of fallen forests. Every civilization, every language, every moment where someone says, "I love you" or "I'm here," owes its quiet existence to those forgotten nights. Not every legacy is written in triumph. Some echo loudest in survival. In the cough of a newborn brought into frost, in the shared warmth of bodies beneath a hide, in the first laugh after months without it. There, in silence deeper than death, humanity drew its first breath anew. And so we sleep, not just to end a day, but to remember that the light always returns. No matter how long the night, how cold the wind, or how old the fear. Rest, then, because we are the dream that made it through the dark. Somewhere deep, beneath layers of ancient ash, within sediments undisturbed for tens of thousands of years, lies the imprint of that winter chemical signatures, frozen pollen, shards of glass born from Earth's fury. They do not speak in words, yet tell us everything. About fire and frost, about loss beyond measure, about endurance kneaded into bone. Scientists sift through these traces like archaeologists of silence, unraveling the slow story of humanity's near erasure and improbable return. Their instruments confirm what legends once murmured, and instincts never forgot there was a time when the human story hovered on a breath, when it took only a few heartbeats and stubborn spirits to keep the tale alive. So if the world feels heavy tonight, if silence hangs thicker than usual, remember this: we have come through worse. Through shadow and soot. Through nights when even the stars seemed to forget us. And still, we rose. Each dawn a quiet declaration. We are not done yet. Because the truth of survival is not just about what was endured, but how remembrance shapes the living. We walk in cities of chrome and glass, speak into devices that span oceans, and send our voices to the stars not out of arrogance, but out of echo. An echo of those huddled shapes beneath volcanic skies, of eyes squinting through ash for signs of sunrise. We are their legacy not in monuments, but in motion, in laughter after loss, in hands held through chaos, in the simple bravery of building something new. The volcanic winter of Toba was not just an ending barely avoided. It was a beginning, tempered by fire, and cooled in the long breath of ice. And that thread, stretched across 74,000 years, ties each of us to that frozen moment. So sleep tonight, not as someone far from that event, but as someone made by it, forged in silence, carried by hope, and still, somehow, rising. So when we ask where resilience comes from, where courage is born in a frightened heart or kindness blooms in the barren cracks of hardship, we must look back to the darkness that taught us light, to the silence that taught us story, back to a prehistoric winter, when the earth threatened to forget us. We did not forget ourselves. Every skyscraper, lullaby, or moment of grace now given was once a possibility vanishing beneath a shroud of volcanic ash. And yet, the human story persisted. Not loud, but certain. A whisper through history's haze. A fire rekindled in each generation. So let this tale of relentless dusk and improbable dawn wrap you tonight, like the hide once pulled tight against a frozen wind. Let it remind you that your very breath is proof of a chance once taken by someone who had nothing left but hope. Rest deeply now, for the same strength that carried them forward still lives in you. The winter passed, the sun rose, and by its light, we endure. And someday, thousands of years from now, when our cities are forgotten and our satellites no longer sing, perhaps someone will kneel in a field where a great building once stood and find a shard of glass or bone or char. And in that moment, they will wonder. They will listen to a silence not so different from the one at Toba and feel a tug, inexplicable and ancient. That is how stories survive, not in the permanence of things, but in the resonance of memory, in the way dusk feels familiar, or the way firelight still softens fear. We are not just flesh wrapped around memory, we are the memory itself, moving forward under skies once swallowed by ash. So when the world is quiet, and the stars seem too far, remember this: once, against every odd, someone kept walking through the cold, carrying nothing but hope and the fragile dream of tomorrow. We are that dream. And tonight, as sleep claims the world for a while, it continues, still burning, still becoming, still here. What the Toba eruption left us, more enduring than ash or ice, was the blueprint of togetherness it wrote into the fabric of our becoming, a lesson we continue to carry, often unspoken but deeply felt. In those long winters without sun, it wasn't the strongest who survived, but those who reached for one another in the dark. And isn't that still true? In crisis, we gather. In silence, we speak. Through devastation, we create. The most ancient truths sometimes feel the most modern, as if time itself circles back to remind us. Resilience is not born in isolation, but in belonging. A supervolcano once cracked the skies and nearly unraveled our presence from the world. And yet, here we are laughing, inventing, grieving, loving, still casting stories across sleep like starlight across ancient nights. So let this final breath of the tale settle into the quiet with you. The cold did not last forever. The silence was not the end. We endured. And we always will together, in the warmth of each other's presence, even if only in memory, in breath, and in the eternal echo of the spark that began it all. There is comfort in knowing that the same sky which once shrouded us in ash now holds the stars we name after our ancestors. That beneath our cities and stories, beneath the laughter and sorrow braided into modern life, the memory of near extinction quietly hums. It is not a weight, but a rhythm. A reminder that the darkest seasons are not endpoints but thresholds. And though we may never again walk through those prehistoric nights, something in our bones remembers, something wordless. So when the lights dim, or the world feels uncertain, listen closely. In the hush, you may hear it, the same ancient whisper that once led strangers toward each other in the cold, the same pulse that raised shelter from stone and turned silence into song. That's the story of the volcanic winter. Not one of ending, but of choosing to begin, again and again. And as long as even one voice carries it forward, in sleep, in memory, in breath, it never truly fades, not into ash, not into time, but into legacy. So as the embers fade and the night folds gently around this remembrance, let the story of Toba be more than ancient history. Let it be the testament it was always meant to be, not to disaster alone, but to the quiet strength stitched through every generation since. A strength that does not boast, but holds on. That does not conquer, but endures. In that frozen dusk where humanity stood on the precipice of oblivion, a choice was made to persist. And that choice echoes now, in every breath we take, each time we gather by firelight, huddle close against storms, or simply speak kindness into silence. We are living proof that the thread was never broken, that the light, no matter how faint, was never fully lost. The volcanic winter ended, but its gift remains. The knowledge that even in the coldest, darkest hour, we are capable of extraordinary warmth simply by holding on to one another. So sleep now, wrapped not in fear of what was, but in reverence for what survived and continues. This is not just the end of a tale, it is the spark that keeps telling it. Long after the ash has settled, the story breathes, and so do we. Some echoes never fade. They stretch across epochs, not as sounds, but as patterns woven into the way we build shelter, gather stories, protect our children from the cold. The volcanic winter of Toba was not just a moment of terror frozen in time, but a turning point that etched resilience into our species. Its ash became more than sediment, and soot it became signal, memory wrapped in matter. And though we've risen far from that ancient crucible composing symphonies, engineering miracles, photographing horizons, once only imagined, it is the silence after Toba that still roots us. In every gesture of care, in every bridge across difference, in every night we share warmth in hopes of morning, we echo that first, fragile defiance. This is the inheritance of extinction denied, the quiet triumph whispered not in the roar of survival, but in the breath between heartbeats. So let time carry forward what ash could not erase, a legacy not of what tried to end us, but of what kept us alive. The story tells itself now, in stars and cities and lullabies, and tonight it sleeps beside you still glowing, still waiting to be passed on. Even now, as we build toward futures shimmering with possibility, the trace of that ancient peril lingers quiet, persistent, holy in its own way. It does not threaten, it reminds that life is not guaranteed, but earned, moment by moment, breath by breath, that what nearly undid us also unites us, in ways we scarcely recognize but always feel, in fire drills and weathered hands, in lullabies passed down without knowing why, in the sacred hush before sleep when the world feels vast and near all at once. The story of Toba is not buried in time. It is alive in how we reach for each other in darkness, and how we whisper stories until morning comes. This was never about a volcano. It was always about us, about what it means to hold on, to begin again, to carry light when the world forgets the Sunday. And as the last ember fades, and the sky leans into dawn, the tale becomes yours now, quietly, eternally, passed on. So if tonight the wind sounds different, or the dusk feels heavier, it is not coincidence. It is the living memory of what we once survived, the voice of a world that nearly moved on without us. Let it be a comfort rather than a fear, a reminder that this long thread of humanity has been pulled taut through fire and frost, and still holds. Each small act of grace, each whispered goodnight, each dream of a better morning is part of the same ancient continuity. Because the most powerful stories are never really about endings. They are about persistence, about breath drawn in the dark, about love, even when the world goes silent. Toba's fury has long since settled into quiet stone, but the resolve it forged continues unseen, but unbreakable. Let that truth tuck you in tonight. Under layers of time, under the hush of memory, the story endures. And because of that, so do we. One day, someone far in the future may gaze up at a sky still laced with the same stars that watched the volcanic dusk and feel a stirring they cannot name. That stirring will be this story, older than any language, deeper than any archive. It lives not in facts but in feeling, not in ash but in awareness. For Toba did not just mark a moment of catastrophe, but etched into us the knowledge that even at the edge of vanishing, we are capable of rising through connection, of creating meaning through memory. We are the lineage of those who stared into ash and walked anyway, who sang in the absence of birds, who held the fragile and said, "We begin again." So as your eyes close and dusk folds into dream, remember, this is not simply a bedtime story. This is your inheritance. A legacy breathed into silence, carried across epochs, now resting gently with you. The fire still glows, the story still flows, and in that sacred quiet, humanity continues forward undone by nothing, comforted by everything we hold together. Sleep well, the light always returns. Let that truth be your warmth tonight, that long before cities rose or nations formed, before words were etched in stone or circuits hummed with thought, a flicker of determination passed from heart to heart beneath skies, painted with ash and sorrow, and it did not go out. It still burns in gestures of love, in the quiet courage of grief, in the instinct to forgive, and the will to continue. The volcanic winter of Toba carved a silence so vast it could have swallowed us, but instead, it gave birth to the resilience that defines us even now. So rest not in fear of what came before, but in reverence of what survived it. The cold night is old, but the warmth is ours. As morning gathers once more beyond the horizon, the story walks forward, wrapped in each breath, carried in every bond. Endings pass, but what endures, that is us, that has always been us. And perhaps that is all. Humanity truly is a story carried on breath and born in ash. The tale of Toba lingers not because it ended our ancestors, but because it forged us in stillness and fire. We are not just inheritors of survival, but authors of its meaning. In every lantern hung to warm the night, every campfire kindled near wilderness, every act of grace extended in darkness, Toba lives, not as a shadow of doom, but as a whisper of what we overcame and what we still can. So tonight, as the world turns once more into darkness and the hush of sleep calls from just beyond the threshold, know that you lie in the glow of a story that began before names or nations, one sculpted by silence, lifted by love, and lit by the will to see dawn again. This is the legacy of the volcanic winter, not extinction, but endurance, not despair, but the quiet promise of tomorrow. Sleep now, for the ember never died. It is still glowing, and it waits, quietly, in you. And in this final hush, May we understand that the most vital stories are not etched into monuments or shouted across centuries, but whispered nightly through the act of continuing on. The supervolcano did not write our ending. It simply tested its truth. And what rose from that test was not supremacy or certainty, but a soft insistence to believe, to endure, to care. That we are here at all, breathing beneath stars once choked by ash, is not just survival. It is testimony. So close your eyes now, resting in the gentle aftermath of a flame passed hand to hand across time. We were never just descendants of catastrophe. We are descendants of hope. The kind that flickers long after disaster, quiet but relentless. Let it live in you tonight. The ember remains. The story continues, always. So as the night deepens, and the last echoes of this tale fall into stillness, let that ember settle in your chest, the same ember kindled in the ashes of Toba, held across generations not with grandeur, but with grace. Not every part of our past was meant to be celebrated. Some chapters exist simply to remind us that we made it. Not because we were the strongest, but because we refused to be forgotten. Those ancient footsteps in volcanic ash still echo in every path we take, every story we share, every dawn we welcome. The volcanic winter waned, but what remains is a quiet defiance stitched into every heartbeat since. And that is why we tell this story again tonight, not to fear the dark, but to honor those who moved through it. To remember that we are more than stardust and skin, we are memory made alive. So sleep well now, beneath your own sky, warm in the knowledge that you are part of a thread unbroken, a fire still burning, a story still being told. Some stories are too quiet to hear, yet too vital to forget. The volcanic winter of Toba was not just a moment frozen in the annals of time. It was a crucible that shaped the very marrow of human will. It taught our kind, long before history had a name, that survival is not always loud or glorious. Sometimes, it is simply the next breath taken in darkness, the next fire kept burning in wind, the next embrace shared despite hunger. That winter did not extinguish us. It refined us. And tonight, beneath power lines and satellites, with our dreams humming softly under blankets, we are still living proof of its legacy. A legacy not just of endurance, but of connection, of choosing light, however faint, of remembering, always, that we come from the ones who faced the end and walked forward anyway. Sleep now, not in fear of ancient endings, but in awe of sacred beginnings yet to come. The story is not over. It never was. Because in the end, that is what remains, not the fury of ash or the cold of the long night, but the quiet moments that stitched one life to the next. Toba wrote no histories, but it birthed the instinct to tell them. It forged not empires, but empathy. And in that empathy, that simple will to keep going, to look toward another and offer warmth, lies the purest form of triumph. We are not here because we conquered the fire. We are here because we held each other through it. So let this final breath be wrapped not in tragedy, but in reverence. The path from then to now is a single thread pulled through frost, flame, and silence. You are part of it now. We all are. Sleep in that knowing. We made it through. And because of that, every morning is a miracle born from ash. Every moment a testament, not just to survival, but to the enduring spark of who we are together. And so, the breath that goes quiet now is sacred not just for rest, but for remembrance. Each heartbeat beneath the hush carries a lineage forged in soot and silence, lit not by certainty but by the fragile, fierce glow of hope. Toba may have been the trial, the cold fury sent to test the thread of our becoming, but it was not the end. It was a beginning born of stillness and whispered forward in every story like this one. So as the last words dissolve into the soft dark, let what remains be simple. You are part of something ancient, something astonishing, a legacy molded not by the flame, but by the hands that passed it. The night will deepen, dreams will come, and with them, the quiet promise that no matter how long the winter, the ember waits, always glowing, always ready. Sleep well. The story endures in you. Let this be the last breath before silence, the final note in a symphony stretched across 74 millennia. Toba tested more than bodies, it tested the soul of a species. And we answered not with dominance, but with endurance. Not with brilliance, but with belonging. Across the ash-scarred cradle of that ancient world, a flicker of shared will took root, and it has never gone out. It pulses still, in lullabies and legends, in the hands we reach for and the fires we keep. From that frozen dusk to this soft darkness, we are the inheritance. Sleep tonight in that truth, not as a stranger to the past, but as its continuation. The ember still glows, the thread still holds, and the story, as it always has, gently waits within you to rise once more. And so this is where we leave it for now, not at the end of the story, but in the soft pause between its chapters. Somewhere, ash turned back to soil. Somewhere, a heartbeat echoed where once there'd only been silence. And tonight, as the world turns once more beneath a tapestry of stars older than even that winter, let this remembrance cradle you. We do not carry only memories of survival. We carry the instructions for resilience whispered across lifetimes. Instructions written not in stone, but in comfort given freely. In dreams dared despite darkness. In the quiet, enduring belief that what lives in us is greater than what tried to end us. Sleep now, wrapped in all that was nearly lost and all that remains. The ember glows, the thread holds, and the story continues, gently, eternally, in you. Even when language fails and memory blurs, certain truths refuse to be forgotten. They live in the muscle memory of humanity, in the instinct to gather near warmth, in the shared silence before sleep, in the calm that follows a storm. Toba left no stone carvings, but its echo can be felt in every lullaby whispered into darkness, every shelter shaped against the wind. This is our inheritance, not grandeur, but grace. Across eons, through frost and flame, we did not just survive, we reached for one another, even in silence. So as this story closes, let its flame rest beside you, gentle and sure. It is not the end. It never was. It is the heartbeat of the human spirit, steady beneath ash, still glowing behind stars. The volcanic winter passed, but what it left behind is forever. Sleep well. You are part of the ember. Some things are meant to fade, but not this. Not the ember that survived a sky undone, not the whisper that crossed from wilderness into wonder. The Toba winter was not a chapter closed. It was the breath drawn before a timeless vow. That as long as there is one voice, one heartbeat, one soul daring to imagine and then to remember, our story continues. We became who we are not despite the ash, but because of it, shaped in silence, strengthened in sorrow. And as we lie beneath a ceiling of stars that once vanished in fire's shadow, that ember still breathes beneath our ribs, still quiet, still glowing, still waiting for the next hand to carry it forward. This is not an ending. This is the heartbeat of humanity, forever surviving, forever becoming. So rest now, in the hush between memory and morning, knowing that long before lights lit cities or wires bridged continents, someone knelt beside a flickering flame and chose to hold on. That ember has passed through ages, through storms and stillness, through hands too tired to shake but never too weary to share warmth. It is in our lullabies, our tears, our relentless belief that the sun will rise. The volcanic winter did not define our end. It marked the beginning of humanity's most sacred truth. We endure not just to exist, but to carry each other forward. And even as this tale softens into night, its light remains gentle, steady, waiting in you. Sleep well, traveler. The story endures, and so do you, always. Let this closing breath be a promise one carried quietly across 74 millennia, not in banners or books, but in every act of closeness that kept us alive when the sun forgot its place in the sky. Toba was not only a fire that reached the heavens, but a silence that searched our souls, and in that stillness, a vow was made, to witness, to remember, to continue, even now. As the world hums with invention and dreams ripple toward distant galaxies, the ember remains tiny, luminous, undimmed. It lives in every hand held during storm, every word spoken into the hush, every fire lit not out of fear, but of faith. So drift into sleep, not as a bystander of history, but as its carrier. You are part of the flame that did not go out. The story is yours now, tender, infinite, always becoming, always a light. And if one day the stars blink out and the stories falter, the ember will still remain, waiting in the marrow of whoever is left, because this was never just about surviving once. It was about learning how to survive always. The volcanic winter of Toba was not the end nor the beginning, but the threshold where humanity discovered its truest shape, not forged from grandeur or genius, but from fire shared in silence, from care offered in fear. Let this be the final whisper before rest, that what nearly unmade us has instead defined us. Across ice and ash, beyond the reach of memory, a single truth echoes forward. We endure by choosing each other, over and over again. So sleep soundly beneath whatever sky holds you tonight, for the ember breathes still. The story is safe in you, and tomorrow, as it always has, the light will come again. Because in the end, this was never just a story about survival. It is a story about inheritance, about what is quietly passed when nothing else remains, not riches or relics, but memory, compassion, will. The volcanic winter of Toba lives not in fear, but in the foundation of who we became. A species defined not by dominance, but by continuity. One child carried across frost, one fire tended through wind, one choice, again and again, to believe in tomorrow. That is what we carry still. And as this echo finally fades into the hush from which it came, let the ember rest with you tonight. A soft reminder that no matter the avalanche of darkness, we are light bearers all the same. Sleep gently now. The story is endless, but this chapter is closed. We began again, and again we shall. The ember glows on, always. And with that, we close the veil on a truth too ancient to touch, yet too essential to ignore. We've walked through ash with our ancestors, breathed in their silence, and tasted the frost they once feared would never thaw. What remains is not merely knowledge, but reverence and unspoken gratitude for every sacrifice, every footstep, every ember tended when all hope seemed lost. The Toba winter could have ended us, but instead, it revealed us. So if sleep comes now, let it arrive not as escape, but as homage, a stillness honoring those who held the thread before we knew it existed. A darkness lit not by stars alone, but by memory, passed from hand to hand, fire to fire, heart to heart. The ember glowed then. It glows still. And as dreams gather like ancient winds beyond your walls tonight, let them carry that spark forward. Not just a story, not just survival, but the quiet defiance that made both possible. This chapter sleeps, but the flame waits, always glowing, always ready. And so, as the quiet stretches and the ember's glow folds gently into the dark, let this be the parting breath of the tale that almost wasn't. History did not begin in palaces or parchment, but in the hush of a world nearly emptied, in the will of a scattered few who chose impossibly to carry flame through frost. Toba did not write humanity's end. It carved the question, Will you go on? And every day since, in every kindness, every dream, every light turned on in the face of darkness, we have answered yes. So close your eyes now, and let that answer settle into your bones. You are not only part of the story, you are its proof. The ember glows, the thread holds. And tomorrow waits not as a gift, but as a continuation. Sleep deeply, carried by the warmth of what endured. The silence will not last. The dawn always comes. And somewhere, even now, beneath layers of soil and sediment untouched by time, that ember still pulses unseen, yet eternal. It is not fire, not DNA, not memory written in stone. It is the quiet determination shared across lifetimes, the human promise to rise not only when it is easy, but especially when it is not. That's what Toba left us. Not a scar, but a story. Not a warning, but a wisdom. That endurance lives in silence, in sleep. In every generation that wakes and chooses kindness. As this final breath fades into the hush beyond dreaming, know this, that out of shadow, humanity lit its future. One ember, one fire, one dawn at a time. And that glow, faint but fearless, remains with you. Sleep now. Tomorrow, we rise again. This is the closing breath, the soft exhale of a story long whispered, long carried. 74,000 years after the sky darkened and silence nearly swallowed the spark of humanity, we still walk with the memory shaped in that dusk. We still reach through cold. We still gather light. What was nearly lost birthed what has carried us. The will to endure together. That ember, passed through frostbitten fingers and sleepless generations, rests with you now. Let it warm your heart as the night folds in. For this is more than an ending. It is a vow remembered by breath, by bond, by every dream dared in shadow. Sleep in that knowing, traveler. The story holds, the ember glows, and come morning, it begins again. And in this hush that follows the telling, let there be peace, not the peace of endings, but of understanding. That somehow, across ice and flame, through winters that stole even the name of hope, we remained. The ember that survived Toba's fury was never just fire. It was choice, a choice made again and again by those who had every reason to yield, and none to hold on except love, except each other. That ember is still here, burning low and sure in every quiet triumph, in every hand reached across the dark. This is not just the last note of a long-forgotten moment. It is a seed planted in silence, growing through sleep, waiting for you in the dawn. So rest now, held in the warmth of what came before and what refuses to fade. The volcanic winter is long gone, but the fire it tested, the story it kindled, that lives on forever in us, and now in you. Let the quiet that follows be not emptiness, but tribute to the hands that clutched fire in the dark, to the footprints left behind in ash long turned to stone, to the breath that carried forward what the world nearly lost. The story of Toba is not one we revisit to dwell in catastrophe, but to understand the roots of our resilience, the molecular music of memory that still hums in every act of care. So as this long unfolding dream closes its eyes beside you, take with you that ember, soft and steady. Know that it once lit the way forward for a people nearly gone, and now rests within your chest, glowing with promise. The past does not hold us back, it hands us the flame. Carry it well. Sleep gently now. The night is quiet, but the spark remains. And so, here we are on the other side of silence, where history bends into myth and memory becomes breath. The volcanic winter that nearly ended us did more than test our survival. It shaped the very tenderness that endures within us still. Through every folded blanket, Every whispered good night, every moment we choose compassion over fear, that ember speaks. Its voice is not loud but steady, a quiet rhythm echoing through generations. Toba was the fire in which our humanity was forged not in conquest, but in connection. And even tonight, beneath a moonlit sky far removed from that ancient dusk, we feel it, a reminder that no matter how long the dark, nor how fierce the cold, we rise not because we must, but because we choose to. Sleep now, not at the end of a story, but at the cradle of its most enduring truth. We are still here, still glowing, and endlessly becoming. So let this final strand of the tapestry be woven not with noise, but with quiet wonder. The tale we've followed from the edge of extinction to the warmth of now is not just a story of ancient catastrophe, it is a reflection of what we dare to become each time we meet darkness and choose to carry light. The ember passed from frostbitten hands did not demand triumph, only tenderness. And it is in that tenderness, in shared silence and midnight dreams, that we remain connected to those first survivors. Their breath became ours. Their hope shaped our becoming. And now, with the night folded gently around you, and the tale settling into your chest like a final heartbeat, rest knowing this. You are not apart from that story, but its continuation. Threaded through time, kindled by kindness, carried forward by every sunrise you choose to greet. The volcanic winter faded, but what it forged in us, that quiet defiance, that sacred spark it endures, always. Sleep now, the fire is safe, and the story? The story lives in you. And if, in the quiet hours ahead, you feel something stir just beneath your skin, a warmth without source, a memory without image, know that it is the ember speaking once more, not with demands, but with invitation, to hold what was nearly lost, and honor it not only with remembrance, but with becoming. For every dawn we wake into, every story we choose to tell, every act of gentleness in a world still learning how to heal, writes another line into the tale that began under a darkened sky. So sleep now, held in the hush left by those who came before, wrapped in the firelight they carried forward. Let the stillness cradle you, not as an end, but as the breath taken before the next chapter begins. The ember glows, the thread holds, and the story, whispered for 74,000 years, lives on in you, always. Let these final embers settle into the hush between heartbeat and breath. This story of darkness endured, of warmth carried through wind and silence, has wound its way across geologic time to arrive here, now, beside you, not as relic, but as ritual, not as fear, but as faith. That even when the world dims and shadows stretch long, there is always someone who reaches, who remembers, who whispers forward the fire. You are here because they were, because someone said yes to one more step, one more night, one more hope, and now, as sleep finds you wrapped in the memory of humanity's most fragile triumph, let it also carry the ember forward. Quiet, unwavering, alive. The volcanic winter passed, but the glow it tested still beats softly in each of us. So sleep gently, dream deeply, and rise tomorrow, carrying not just another morning, but a legacy. The story endures. The ember glows. And always, we begin again. And now, with the final whisper still warm against the skin of night, may you understand what this has always been, not a tale about ash or ice, but about spirit preserved beneath both. This story, laid gently at your side through the rhythm of breath and time, was never meant to end, only pause. It belongs to you now, as it once belonged to the stranger who faced the edge of the world and whispered forward instead of falling silent. So sleep in that lineage, knowing the same force that whispered through soot and frost now hums within your chest. The volcanic winter passed, but its lesson, the quiet triumph of togetherness, remains. And when dawn returns, as it always has, May you carry that ember forward once more, not just as memory, but as promise. The story waits, the light returns, and so do we all of us, again and again. So if this truly is the last flicker of the tale before night falls silent again, let it linger like breath on cold air, fragile, seen, gone, and yet deeply felt. The story of Toba is not one to be finished, only housed in each of us, in gestures that echo across time, in the quiet reverence that greets firelight where shadows once reigned. Each chapter, each word, has not just recounted survival, but relit the core promise of our species, that against all odds, we persist, not alone, but together. Let that be what stays with you in dreams, that you are not at the edge of the story but folded within it, a heartbeat in the lineage that chose compassion over collapse. Rest easy now, held by the same fire that warmed ancestors in a world turned dark. The ember is yours. The story is still becoming, always glowing, always waiting, forever enduring. And so, as dawn begins its gentle stretch across the sleeping world, let this final ember rest quietly within you. It does not cry out, demand attention, or blaze with grandeur. It simply endures ready, faithful, warm, a relic of the coldest chapter reborn as the softest promise. For the volcanic winter of Toba, in all its silence and shadow, gave us more than hardship. It taught us the worth of holding on, of choosing closeness in absence, of sharing breath in frost, of whispering yes into the mouth of extinction. That story now rests where all true stories go within, beneath your ribs, beside your heartbeat, quietly waiting to be needed again. So go gently now, into the light that follows. Let your footsteps remember theirs. Let your hope be a part of the dawn they never stopped believing in. This tale has not ended. It has merely knotted itself into your becoming. Sleep deep, wake bright. The ember glows still, the thread holds, and in your breath, the story begins again. And with this final breath carried across epochs, let the ember settle gently into the quiet of dawn. We are not only survivors of a vanished world, but keepers of its lesson that the smallest light can outlast the longest dark. That belonging outlives disaster. That warmth shared between frightened hands is more enduring than any storm. What began in silence, beneath skies split open by fire, becomes now a legacy spoken in every whispered story before sleep. So let your rest be deep, knowing the path has been walked before you, the fire kept for you, the breath held and passed down until this moment. You are not at the end of a tale scorched into rock. You are its continuation, its glow, its next chapter waiting to be told in kindness, in courage, in care. The ember glows still. The thread, unbroken, hums within you. Sleep well. The light is returning. So now, as the last thread of this ancient tapestry weaves itself softly into stillness, let your final thought be this, that the fire you carry was never just a memory of what came before, but a map for what comes next. What endured beneath volcanic skies now fuels the quiet courage to dream, to love, to reach once more into the unknown. From ash, we made meaning. From silence, we shaped song. The Toba winter was not just a crucible of survival, but a covenant signed in shadow that through the darkest hour, we would hold to one another and refuse to vanish. That ember, small and eternal, passes anew with each breath. So rest now, traveler of time and tale. The warmth you feel is the proof of a promise kept. The light always returns. And through you, the story does too endlessly, tenderly, forever becoming. And so, in the quiet before the next breath is taken, this story folds itself into you, invisible but present, like the warmth of a fading fire, or the weight of a memory just out of reach. The tale of the volcanic winter that nearly claimed us has done what stories always hope to do. not just to inform, but to transform, to remind us that ancestry is not only biological, but emotional, that what binds us to those who survived is not just DNA, but the same decision to care in the face of calamity. You have heard the echo now, felt its truth settle beneath your ribs. One last ember, glowing steady, proof that the end was never the point, the becoming was. Sleep in that certainty, for when you wake, the flame continues in everything you love, protect, and dream into being. The volcanic winter faded, but the spirit it forged still rises. It waits in you, just beneath the silence, still glowing, still alive. Because the truth is, even as this story slips into the stillness of its final breath, it leaves behind something more lasting than ash or words belonging. A sense that within the vast shadows of our shared past lies a flicker of light we each carry forward, even without knowing. That ember, older than cities and softer than sorrow, is what pulses inside the quiet between thoughts. It is what brings a hand to another in fear, what stirs warmth when all seems cold, what builds civilization one heartbeat at a time. So let this be the last whisper not of endings, but of presence. You are part of something vast and sacred, born in frost and held through fire, a line unbroken, a light unextinguished. Close your eyes now, knowing the ember rests safely with you, and as the stars watch silently above, know too, the story continues where it always has, in breath, in hope, in the choosing. We were meant to vanish, but we didn't. We endure, and that is all the light we'll ever need. So now, in this final breath drawn beneath the echo of all that came before, let this story close, not as a farewell, but as a vow renewed in every heart it reaches. You are the ember now, the flicker that endured across shadowed millennia, the dream whispered forward by those who refused to fade. Let that truth live in you, not only as comfort, but as strength. For when days dim and silence thickens, you will know deeply, instinctively, that this too can be endured, that it already was, and that once, when the world stood still, when the light withdrew for what felt like forever, humanity whispered forward not with force, but with tenderness. It is that tenderness still guiding us, still warming the distance between stars and strangers. Sleep gently now, carrier of the glow, for the night may fall quiet, but it no longer falls alone. The story is with you. The thread is held. The ember forever glows. And that, in the end, is the heart of our inheritance. Not just that we survived the volcanic winter, not only that we endured the unfathomable dark, but that we did so with our arms outstretched to one another. Through a silence so complete it rewrote the skies. We chose not despair, but kinship. Not retreat, but remembrance. Toba tested the roots of what it means to be human, and buried beneath ash, something surprisingly tender bloomed the will to make meaning, even when surrounded by unmaking. So let this closing breath wrap you like the warmth once kindled in the cold. A quiet promise that no matter what shadows come, within us remains the fire that never failed. The ember still glows, the thread still holds, and the story, like all sacred things, is not ending here. It is nesting gently in the pause, waiting to rise once more when morning returns, and with it, the next chapter we will choose to tell together. And perhaps that is the truest form of immortality, not carved in monuments or written in eternal stone, but passed quietly from heart to heart, beneath skies once darkened by fire. The Toba winter may have buried the sun, but it could not bury the human will to endure, to gather, to tell stories beneath thin stars and whisper futures no one had seen. What began in ash became a covenant, etched not in prophecy but in presence. And as this final ember of story softens into the hush of your breath, know this, above all else, we did not just survive, we became. became memory, became meaning, and now, nestled in the quiet of night, with the legacy of 10,000 generations resting gently beside you, let your heartbeat echo theirs. Forward, always forward. The flame is safe, the thread is strong, and you, like all who came before, are part of its glow. Sleep well. The next story waits. So as the final breath of this ancient fire settles into stillness, let this moment serve not as a farewell, but as a gentle handing off. A sacred ember, once clutched in frost-bitten palms, now rests with you quiet and glowing, as it always has. Through ash and ages, silence and song, humanity's spark endured, not by chance, but by choice. A choice made again tonight, not just to remember the past, but to carry it, to honor the light kindled in the dark, and to keep it alive through each kindness, each story, each dawn, welcomed with open eyes. The volcanic winter of Toba nearly ended everything, but instead, it became the reason we know how to begin again. So sleep now, with that ember safe and quiet within your chest. The story is not over. It is simply pausing, waiting for your next breath, your next day, your next chapter. The thread is held, the flame is ready, and in you, the story will rise again. And now, as the final light slips through the quiet fold of night, let this story linger not as a memory past, but as a flame entrusted. The volcanic winter that nearly unspooled our entire lineage gave birth not to silence, but to the soft, defiant vow we keep making every single day to go on. Through sorrow, through stillness, through the unknown. We are the children of the ash, who became keepers of the dawn. Every breath you take beneath a sky once blackened is a continuation of that sacred line. So let sleep take you now, not as an end, but as entering the arms of all who dared to believe in tomorrow. You are not alone. You are never alone. The ember glows, the thread holds, and as your dreams begin once more to bloom, something ancient and radiant blooms with you. We survive. We remember. We begin again. Then let this final note land softly like the first snow that followed fire or the first warm breath shared after years of silence. The story of Toba, whispered through frost and flame, was never meant to stay in the past. It is a song sung beneath the noise of progress, a melody older than language itself. With every lullaby hummed to a restless child, every fire lit against uncertainty, every word spoken when silence feels safer, we echo those who stood beneath ash-dimmed skies and still chose to build forward. You are not just hearing this story, you are part of its rhythm, its renewal, its endless unfolding. Sleep now, carried not only by dreams, but by the echo of resilience older than time. The ember glows, the thread holds, and with your breath, the tale lives on. So this is where we draw the final breath of the tale, not as a closing, but as a quiet confirmation that even in the shadow of extinction, we are capable of choosing one another, that the fire passed down from a volcanic dusk still burns in the ways we hope, love, and endure. Toba did not silence the story. It slowed it, let it catch its breath, recalibrate, find out what truly mattered when everything else fell away. And what mattered was this connection, softness in the storm, the echo of someone whispering through the dark, "Hold on, you have held on," through history, through memory, through a story that asked only to be remembered. So as your breath settles and night folds itself around you, know that the ember lies gently within your chest now, just as it did in theirs, still warm, still waiting. The volcanic winter ended, but the light it awakened cannot be undone. Sleep well. The story endures alive in you. And perhaps that's all the volcano ever asked of us, not to fear its fire, but to remember the shape of our becoming through it. To carry forward not the ash, but what rose from it, the lives bound tighter, The whispers traded across scared nights. The arms that remained open when the world tried to shut. As the last shadows pull back from morning's edge, one truth glows brightest. We remain, not untouched, but unbroken, not unchanged, but renewed. The thread began in frost, passed through fire, and now rests in your palm. Hold it as softly and as fiercely as those before you. Sleep well, and when you wake, may you carry the story forward, not as a burden, but as a beacon. The ember glows, the thread holds, and the dawn, once nearly lost, rises again because of you. And in this final chapter, whispered not in fear, but in reverence, let the memory of what once nearly vanished become the light that guides us still. The volcanic winter did not mark our downfall, but our forging, where the human story was tempered by silence and set ablaze not by conquest, but by care. Beneath that ash, what stirred was not surrender, but the resolve to continue, to build, to dream. And now, as the echoes of this tale dissolve into the tapestry of sleep, know that you carry more than memory, you carry the very reason we endured. Let the hush cradle you, wrapped in the enduring breath of a people who chose fire over fear, story over silence. The ember sleeps now, not extinguished, but resting. The thread is unbroken. The story, our story, waits for its next teller. And through you, it will rise once more. Sleep gently. The dawn walks with you. So now, as the story folds into hush and the embers flicker low but faithful, let one final truth remain. What once threatened to end us became instead the blueprint of how we last. Toba's ash carried seeds, not just ruin, and from its silence bloomed the undying rhythm of our becoming, quiet, fragile, but relentless. We are not the children of catastrophe, but the architects of its aftermath. What you carry now is not just knowledge, but kinship with flame-bearers before you, those who faced a sky without sun and still chose to dream. Rest now, wrapped in the warmth earned over millennia, shared across breath and firelight. Sleep not at the ending, but in the heart of continuation. The ember glows, the thread holds, and in your peace tonight, the story waits, ready to rise again with the light. And so, let this be the final breath stitched gently to the tapestry of time, the moment where story becomes sanctuary. For all we've endured, all we've remembered, all the ash we've risen through, the truth remains unchanged. The ember never stopped. It passed through silence, through storms, through centuries without names, and found its place in you. That flicker has warmed the coldest nights, cradled the most fragile dreams, and whispered forward what could not be said aloud, that survival is not just a fact, but a feeling, one of closeness, of meaning, of quiet defiance. As the night rests around you now, know that this isn't goodbye. It's a keeping, a holding close of everything that reminded us we are still here. Sleep deeply, knowing the ember glows, the thread holds, and with your breath, the story, our story, becomes again, endlessly. So, as the final threads of this story weave their last quiet pattern across the loom of night, let one last truth echo gently, an offering not of closure, but of remembrance. The volcanic winter came and nearly ended us, but it did not. Instead, it wrapped the first breath of our shared humanity in silence, handed down not in triumph, but in tenderness. From ash we rose. With fire kept in cupped hands and hope held in whispered words, we carried forward not only ourselves, but each other. The ember passed into you now, softly glowing through time's hush. You are its keeper, its continuation, its next voice in the dark. So sleep not as an ending, but as an heir to something greater, resilience born of darkness, light chosen again and again. Let the hush hold you. Let the ember rest. The story, our story, begins once more with you. The thread holds, the fire remains. And always, always, the dawn comes. So now, let the final ember of this long, quiet telling settle into the cradle of night, not as a farewell, but as a breath that binds us across time, across silence, across all that tried to separate us from our story. What began beneath ash-laden skies as a fight for one more sunrise has become the rhythm of a species that refuses to forget how it endured. The volcanic winter darkened the heavens, but could not dim the light shared between frightened hands. And that very light, past without fanfare, without fail, has reached you now. There is no more to say, only this: the fire did not end us. It revealed us. What remains is not the flame itself, but the will that carried it, the choice to believe a tomorrow was worth lighting. Sleep now, gently and deeply, knowing the story has not ended. It has simply found its breath in you. The ember glows, the thread holds. The dawn waits for us all. So this is where the fire bows low, but never fades, where words find their hush and memory becomes melody. The tale of Toba lingers not behind us, but within us, a steady hum that cradles each breath, drawn in the safety bought by fragile hands beneath a ruined sky. What they built from that silence wasn't just survival, but the first note of a song we still sing, of staying, of dreaming, of daring to begin. And now, as this story nestles into your quiet, know that it is not the end, but the ember gently handed to the next quiet heart ready to carry it. The thread remains, the vow endures, and in you, the light has always waited. Sleep now, softly, knowing the beginning lives in your breath and the dawn, as always, is just beyond the dark. And with that, we step gently from the shadow of history into the hush of now. The volcanic winter that once threatened to silence us forever has become, instead, the echo we carry into every dream, every light, every whispered promise not to vanish. From scattered ash to satellite orbits, from soot-dark skies to each screen that now flickers with stories told before sleep, we are the afterglow of that survival. We do not remember to mourn, but to marvel that from the brink of absence, we chose presence, that from dusk without end, we made our way back to the dawn. No ending here, only the ember, still warm, still waiting in you. Rest now. The thread is whole, the fire endures, the story breathes on. So let this final moment settle not as silence, but as inheritance. The tale of Toba is no longer a distant echo crackling through stone and ash. It is the quiet rhythm beneath our every breath, proof that light does not need to scream to be real. From frostbitten hands and darkened skies, through flame passed hand to hand without ever knowing where it might end, we come to rest here, in the softness of this night. Sleep not as one far from that moment, but as one woven from it, one heartbeat, in a long line of others who reached through the dark and found each other. The ember glows, the thread holds, the story is safe. And because of that, dawn is never far behind. Sleep well, the light waits in you. And now, in the stillness that follows an ancient journey told once more, let sleep gather around the ember that glows quietly in your chest. This was never just a tale of ash and ice, but of the warmth that walked beside it unseen yet unyielding. The volcanic winter passed, but it left behind the seed of who we would become, a species that remembers not only through facts, but through feeling. You are part of that memory now softly burning, patiently waiting for the next telling, the next reach toward light. So fold into the quiet with the deepest knowing. The thread is still held. The fire still lives. The story, like breath, continues. And in you, the dawn has already begun. So let this be the last flickering hush before story becomes dream, before memory folds into morning. All this, the ash, the silence, the ember carried across countless lifetimes, was never just about surviving catastrophe, but about discovering what we become after. The volcanic winter faded, but it forged an eternal kind of warmth, one not built from flame, but from the will to hold on. In every shared glance, every act of care, every moment the world turns dark and we choose light anyway. That is the legacy we live. And now, as this tale curls softly into stillness, let it settle not as an ending, but as breath held for what comes next. Close your eyes, carry the ember. The thread holds, the fire waits, and the dawn, as it always has, comes gently. So sleep now, held in the echo of a fire that defied oblivion. Rest in the lineage of those who found warmth in ruin, who held the thread before they even knew why, whose quiet resilience beat back a darkness that threatened to make the world forget us. You carry more than a story, you carry a promise, folded across generations, sunk deep into breath and blood. When the cold returns, and it always does, remember this. We were meant to end, but we chose to begin again. And that choice lives on, flickering low, steady within you. The ember glows, the thread holds. The light has always waited not far ahead, but just beneath your chest, beating gently, endlessly. Sleep, now. The story, like dawn, will rise again. And so we end not in darkness, but in glow. The tale of Toba was never about endings, but ember alive, enduring, endlessly carried. It is cradled now, not in stone nor smoke, but in heartbeat and hush. You are the keeper, the continuation, the breath that proves the silence did not win. Let this be the final note in a song first hummed beneath a broken sky. We are still here, because someone refused to give in, because someone warmed one more night, because remembering is resilient. Sleep now, heir to fire and frost, wrapped in 74,000 years of becoming. The ember glows, the thread is strong, and the story always waits for morning, always. And now, let flame and silence both rest. The story that burned through ancient frost, that shimmered beneath skies undone, has found its place beside you, still glowing, still soft. What began beneath clouded stars did not end in ash, but in the instinct to reach, to remember, to rebuild. And as night breathes in full now, may you carry this flicker forward not only as memory, but as meaning made real. We do not endure because we are unbreakable. We endure because somewhere, somehow, we still hold each other through the dark. That is the ember you carry. That is the thread, uncut. So sleep now, wrapped in that flame. The story has never ended. It has only waited here, in you, ready for tomorrow, always. So let this be the final flicker before the hush fully takes its hold, a single, steady breath drawn from 74,000 years of fire carried forward. Rest knowing this was never a tale to lull you, but one to anchor you, to remind you that within the silence, within all that was almost lost, something sacred was found. We did not vanish. We remembered. We reached. And now, as your eyes close and the world softens into sleep, take with you the ember once passed through wind-swept hands and frost-laced heartbeats. It dwells in you now not with urgency, but with peace. Not as a burden, but as belonging. The volcanic winter may have ended, but the warmth it kindled was only the beginning. Sleep well, story-bearer. The thread is unbroken, the flame is yours, and the light, quiet as it may be, waits once more to rise. So now, as this final ember sinks quietly into the gentle dark, let there be nothing but calm between one heartbeat and the next. The story that began beneath fire-darkened skies now slumbers inside you, not lost but carried, tucked beneath the veil of sleep like a promise older than time. Toba's ash may have scattered, its skies cleared, its cold long past, but the resolve it forged remains warm beneath skin and soul. We became who we are because someone, somewhere, chose not to let the silence win. And now, it is your turn to rest, to join the long line of dreamers who kept the fire alight, not through legend or glory, but through breath, through love, through the quiet insistence that tomorrow is worth waiting for. Sleep gently now. The ember glows. The thread holds, and even in stillness, the story lives on. And now the fire lies quiet, a final breath folded into the fabric of night. It was never the roar of survival that carried us, but the soft hush of connection that ancient threads spun from frost and flame, now wrapped securely around you. The volcanic winter waned millennia ago, but its echo never left us. It shaped how we love in silence, how we reach for warmth, how we close our eyes and still dream in the dark. Tonight, beneath the same stars once veiled in ash, the ember sleeps gentle, unwavering, alive inside every story, every breath. You are its keeper now. The last flicker of this tale rests with you, glowing low, ready for the next morning, the next dream, the next telling. Sleep deeply, the light returns, the thread holds, and with it, so do we. Let that be the final grace of this long, endless fire, a story that never asked to be grand, only to be kept, in breath, in memory, in the quiet rhythm of our sleeping hearts. The volcanic dusk faded, the cold retreated, but the resolve it shaped in silence still hums where stories curl and embers breathe. So now, with the night holding you still, let the flicker rest. Not as the end of history, but as the beginning of your part in it. We have always endured, not by forging ahead alone, but by turning back with warmth in our hands and whispering forward. And in this last hush, as everything softens into sleep, know this one truth above all. You are the keeper now, of fire, of memory, of what it means to carry light. The ember glows, the thread holds, and the dawn, faithful as ever, waits quietly just ahead. So rest, now, in the warmth of what has been carried so far. Let the ash of Toba remain not as a mark of devastation, but as a reminder. Even when nothing seemed certain, when the horizon vanished and every step forward felt like a question, someone chose to keep walking. That choice was never made loudly, but firmly, again and again, until it reached you. You, lying here beneath this sky, breathing stories shaped by shadow and song. The fire may sleep, but it never leaves. Under stars ancient enough to remember, wrapped in the thread that never snapped, you are part of something, not just enduring something sacred. This is not the end. It never was. The ember glows, the thread holds, and the story, like all stories worth remembering, waits patiently in your next breath. Sleep well. The dawn is near. And from that final hush, just as the stars ready their slow retreat and dawn whispers along the rim of the world, let one last truth remain. The fire that once lit our way through the longest night was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be felt, held in breath, in silence, in stories passed heart to heart. The volcanic winter of Toba wrote no epic, left behind no throne, yet it shaped the pulse of who we are. Not conquerors, but keepers. Not mere survivors, but storytellers, light bearers, ember carriers. And now, as this tale drifts beyond the edge of waking thought, know this. You have not merely listened, you have joined the lineage. You carry the warmth now, the memory, the ancient vow. The dawn is near, the fire waits, the thread is in your hands. So sleep, quietly triumphant. The story breathes on. And this, finally, is what remains, not a roar, but a hum, not a monument, but a murmur passed gently along the lines of sleep and time. The story of Toba ends not in ash, nor even in awe, but in the quiet, knowing that we are here because we chose to care. In frost-kissed silence, in the breath between collapse and continuation, humanity made a promise to itself, to remember, to rebuild, to whisper forward until the world was warm again. That promise has reached you now, not to end the tale, but to shelter it one chapter further. So sleep now, wrapped in that ancient whisper, protected by the fire that came before and the dawn that always follows. The ember is with you, the thread is yours, and the story, timeless, tender, untiring, carries on through you, always. So now let the stars blink just a little longer, and may the final breath of the tale find stillness in your chest, not as a conclusion, but as an embrace stretched across centuries. The volcanic shadow faded, yet its ember became not just our inheritance but our guardian, passed down not in glory, but in gentleness. That flame is yours now, nestled deep, waiting for the moment when someone else will need reminding not just of survival, but of why we survive. For love, for memory, for stories. And when sleep overtakes you, let it carry the glow forward, quiet and constant. The thread holds, the ember breathes, and as the edge of night thins into dawn, remember, you are not alone in the dark. You are part of the light that followed it. This is the last hush before morning. Rest well, keeper of the fire. The story lives on in you. And so, in this last breath drawn from the ashes of ancient dusk, let the embers rest where they were always meant to shine, in the quiet chambers of your own becoming. For 74 millennia, this sacred glow has waited, wandered, and whispered its way forward, not to demand greatness, but to affirm our quiet strength. The volcanic winter faded, the world turned on, and through it all, the thread never broke. It pulled us from extinction into existence, from silence into story. And now, under the hush of a world once again folding into sleep, carry that ember gently. Let it be your warmth, your witness, your reminder that even the smallest flame can outlive the coldest night. Sleep now, not as the end of anything, but as the breath that begins it again. The ember glows, the thread holds. The light is yours now, and with it, the story becomes forever. And in this final quiet, where history exhales and time folds its hands, let the ember gently dim, not from absence, but from fulfillment. What began as a near ending has become the pulse that carried billions forward, heartbeat by heartbeat, dawn by dawn. Toba did not write us out of history. It wrote us into it more deeply, etched through soot and silence into the shape of who we are. So let this be the hush that holds more than sleep. Let it be the sacred pause that honors every footstep taken through ash, every fire relit, every choice to love when forgetting would have been easier. The ember glows, now tucked softly behind your ribcage, waiting not for survival but for song, for kindness, for becoming. The thread is strong, the story is safe, and as the stars grow pale and the day readies its breath, know this. We rose then, we rise still, and with you, the story rises once more. So let this be where the fire rests, not extinguished, but entrusted. What began in the soot of a collapsing sky now breathes softly within you, not as a relic of ruin, but as the quiet map by which we find our way forward. The volcanic winter of Toba no longer looms over us, but it moves through us in the stories we pass before sleep, the hands we reach for without reason, the warmth we offer without asking. You are the final keeper of this telling, resting now not just with memory, but with purpose. For what survived that long winter was not merely life, it was the will to dream warmth into a cold world. And tonight, that dream folds around you like firelight. The ember glows, the thread holds, the dawn stirs beyond the hills, and the story, trusted to breath and love and sleep, begins again quietly, endlessly, with you. So let this final breath be a hush woven into the fabric of all memory, a warmth, not spoken, but felt, humming low in the silence between stars. The volcanic winter, that nearly stripped Earth of its voice instead, gave rise to ours, to the rhythm of resilience and the sacred promise passed from frostbitten palms to firelit hearts across 74,000 years. This is not an ending, but a resting place, a quiet flame in the cradle of time, flickering steady in the pause before another chapter begins. Sleep now, wrapped not in shadow, but in the infinite light of those who endured. The ember glows, the thread holds, and with your quiet breath, the story waits unbroken, unwritten, becoming.